You know, I do think that the work that we're going to have to do moving forward, and I speak about moving forward, is about pushing for more inclusive images, for pushing for images as, you know, that are more reflective of our entire community. You know, I talked to a number of people, you know, who were planning on voting yes, and I worked them to vote no. And, you know, and I can tell you that from a lot of communities, people thought that, you know, being gay meant that you're rich and that you're white and that you're male. And I think the work that we have to do, the work that is so powerful that comes out of places like Sundance, is about finding the common ground. Some folks on here said that, you know, they're not activists. I've always been an activist. My parents took me to my first rally. You know, we were out in front of the Shoreham Wading River Nuclear Power Plant when I was a baby, and I ended up on the front of Newsday with buttons on about nuclear, and so you know, it's in my blood. It is who I am. But you know, my first real interaction with a gay person was Pedro on The Real World. And so the images that come out of the entertainment world have the incredible ability to change hearts and minds. I had an uncle who was gay who didn't talk about it. I had a cousin who was gay who didn't talk about it. And so what we produce, what people can produce in the entertainment world, has an incredible ability. So looking forward, it's not just about, you know, how much more images we can put out, but it's about the incredible breadth that we can show so that we can reach as many people as possible.
Great, thanks. And I'm going to go next to Matt Coles, but we're going to hold his clip for a bit. He wants to have it in the midst of his remarks. It's always different. Always leading the way.
Well, it's not a clip. It's just a single screen. And, you know, look, if we were to ask the question, why did we lose the Prop 8 election in California, we could come up with a lot of answers, a lot of right answers. But I think if you pull back and look at it from a distance and ask that question, the answer to the question is because to a very large extent, gay people and gay relationships still make a whole lot of Americans uncomfortable. Our relationships, to a very large extent in the United States, are still not completely legitimate. Look, on Labor Day, we had a solid block of votes who were ready to vote yes on Prop 8 and did, and a solid block of votes who were ready to vote no on Prop 8 and did, and a group of people who were deeply conflicted. And it's those people I want to focus on for a second. Those people, having watched all the marriages and the great stories that came out of them, generally thought that it probably would be a mean thing to vote for Prop 8. I'm talking about back at Labor Day. But they also didn't like the idea of gay marriage very much. They thought it was too much change, too fast, too soon. And my sense of what happened was that our opponents developed a very, very good campaign that was focused on exploiting that discomfort and getting underneath those people's skins. One of the interesting things is when you probe into that discomfort and where it comes from, people start talking about their children. And when you ask them what they're afraid about with their children and get really deeply into it, and GLAAD has done some great work on this, you find two things. One, I think astonishingly, some people saying, well, you know, if you make being gay just a part of the ordinary landscape, it'll seem really easy. And some kids who might wind up otherwise leading straight lives will wind up being gay. Of course, the assumption of that is that would be better, right? It would be better if they did that. And the other answer you get from people is just, you know what, it's not appropriate to talk to anyone like who's not in high school yet about gay people or gay relationships. It's just not something they should have to hear about. Now, those two answers about what's going on at that discomfort are different, but they share one thing, and they share the notion that the relationships are really illegitimate, not something that ought to be talked about, certainly not the same thing as heterosexual families and relationships. Could we have done a better job in meeting that argument in the Prop 8 campaign? Sure. But look, I walked precincts in the Prop 6 campaign. I walked precincts in 65, in 69, in the 102 campaign. I'm talking about all the anti-gay initiatives throughout the 80s. There wasn't a single one that we couldn't have done a better job with at the end of it. If you sit at the end of a campaign and you don't think you could have done better, you weren't paying attention. What I'm really interested in is this. As long as there are large chunks of people in America, and there are bigger chunks outside California than in California, who think our relationships are illegitimate, then everything we try to do, whether it's an equal employment bill through Congress or through states or equal marriage rights, any fight for equality is always going to be vulnerable to an attack that's aimed at that discomfort, that's aimed at that illegitimacy. If we're going to really put this away, we're going to have to make gay people in our relationships completely legitimate. Now, I have always believed that you don't persuade people by talking about abstract principles. It may sound like a strange thing from an ACLU lawyer. I think you change people's minds by telling stories. And that's one of the reasons why I think of Rob and his work as activist work, because it is how you begin changing people's minds. Well, let me tell you, folks, what research tells us again and again is the single most effective way to change the way people think about gay people and gay relationships, the single most effective way to get at that illegitimacy is one-to-one conversations between gay people and their close friends and family, people they're already close to. Conversations about what it's like to be gay, ways in which being gay is more challenging, ways in which being gay is perfectly ordinary. You know, Harvey used to say, we've got to come out. Well, what we know now is that coming out is not enough. You've got to talk. And even if you're talking to people in your close circle who are already on our side, have the conversation, because they will be more on our side. If they support us now, they'll walk precincts if you have the conversation. And if you have the conversation with other people who aren't on our side now, we know that's what will put them across. The screen that I wanted to show, if we've got it, I think actually we've lost it.
No, this is just screensaver.
Oh, okay. Yeah. On Join the Impact, a website that was launched after the defeat of Prop 8, really a movement group that was launched right after the success of Prop 8 by a bunch of grassroots activists. We'll launch in about 10 days a little website which we've helped them put together called Tell 3. And the idea is to try and capture some of the energy that's come out of the Prop 8 defeat by saying back to our community, look, you want to win this, you want to put this away, this is how you have to do it. It's in your own hands. You have to have conversations with people who are in your immediate circle about what it's like to be gay. If we do this, we're going to win this and get full equality in the United States in less than 20 years. No doubt about it in my mind, all the way across the country. If we don't do it, it's going to take at least twice as long. And so let me just say the last pitch, which is why here at Sundance. It's really simple. Films like Rob's films, like Brokeback, like Milk, are great conversation starters. They help people start conversations. But frankly, I think that's a very secondary small point. If folks are working in film, you're in the most culturally important movement in the United States. You have the greatest cultural influence of any group of people in the United States. I'd like to think it's the ACLU, but it's not. We've got to embed this idea in people's brains, in the brains of the gay community and our supporters. That's how we're going to make sure that we don't lose something like Prop 8 again.
Very good. Thank you, Matt. So I want to call on myself for a minute, if I can, and be kind of a panelist as well. Matt was saying that he was married 4 years ago in Vancouver, and I know that Cooper was married in California in November?
November 1st.
Thank you, November 1st. I was married in Toronto in 2003. You were there. And also in San Francisco on the very same date, September 10th. So I can get a first and so I have a fifth year anniversary and wedding anniversary on the same date. I'm not somebody who came up really particularly caring about gay and lesbian marriage. If you were to have asked me, I would have said, why is that the issue? However, I live with someone with extreme health challenges and who did grow up with the white dress fantasy, even though she was a dyke, a very, very femmy dyke. And it makes her really happy. Doing it the first time in Toronto for legal reasons and health proxy, much more ironclad health proxy reasons, I discovered that it was very, very powerful to have your relationship witnessed in that kind of way. And it was when the law was first changed in Canada, and we got featured in the Toronto tabloid, not the Liberal paper, but the tabloid, the Toronto Star, which sent a photographer and ran a big color picture and did a big story on us coming up to see films and get married. And it was very, very interesting to have that occur.